Hi, and welcome to part 6 of this PowerShell GUI tutorial series. In the last video, we've first used Design Studio 2019 to design our form, and we remade our service inspector. Today, we're going to be remaking another script that we've already written in another video. It's going to be the CSV splitter script. So we're going to make a GUI for it just because we can have a lot of different controls that we haven't used yet. So we're going to be using text boxes quite a bit, and we are actually going to be creating our own little file picker. So we're going to have buttons with text boxes that are going to be read-only, and we are going to use the file dialog and the folder dialogs to be able to pick the incoming file and then the outgoing directory. So let's go ahead and let's just see what the application looks like. So let me just run it here so you guys can see what it looks like. So I'm just opening up the script right now. So we have this file picker here. So if we just run this here, and let me just zoom in a little bit. So we have this input, so we can pick a file, and we can pick this file here, which is the name's CSV. We can specify the delimiter. We can validate the file, so we see that it is a valid file. We get 100 lines. The headers, we have a column 1, which is the sequence number, column 2, which is first, and column 3, which is last. Now, if I changed this to a semicolon and hit validate file, we can see that we only get one column that are separated by commas. So we can see that this isn't really what we would want. So we're just going to put a comma here. And then we can pick our output folder. So here we're going to get another dialog where we can pick a folder. So we are just going to pick the desktop here, and we want to split it into 5 files, and we hit split, and then we get in a list all the different files that were created. So if we actually go look on the desktop, we can actually see, if I zoom out here, we can actually see the different files here. So if I open up one of these, and we just go to open it with Notepad here, we could actually see the numbers 1 through 20 because it was split into 5 files. And the original file here, which if it's split into 20, we should see 100 in here. So if I just zoom in, and we can see that we do get 100. So it does work. It does split all the files, and it's a nice little GUI, so someone doesn't actually have to open up a script file if they aren't comfortable with scripts. This is a really, really handy way of giving tools to people that might not be comfortable editing a PowerShell script, and they are able to use the same tools. So let me just put those there. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create that form. So let's go ahead and let's just create a new project here. And again, you could use the old projects, but I'm just going to really get into the habit of showing you guys where exactly to find it. So we're just going to scroll down till we see a WPF application. So we're just going to pick a C# WPF application and click on Next. And this time I'm just going to give it a name because why not? Let's name it CSV Splitter, which really will not make too much of a difference. The target framework, we're just going to keep it the .NET 3.1 here. So let's click on Create. So in this video, I'm thinking of mostly focusing on the design of the application. And then in the next video, we're going to go over all the different coding aspects just because this is a much bigger application with definitely quite a bit more design aspects and um, coding to it as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the form, we're going to load it into PowerShell, get at least the actual form to open up in PowerShell, and then in the next video, we're going to be coding it completely. So we have our window here. So we have a nice size window. We're going to keep it the default size, and we're going to start importing some different things here. So we already know that we need a button. So let's get a button in here. And actually, let me see if I can actually make this a little bit clearer for you guys. Oh, that should be a bit better. So we're going to put a button up there, and let me just bring this down since we really don't need that. So let's put a button right here. And then we're going to bring in a text box here as well. So everything there is matched up nicely. Let's just match up the text box to the button so they look exactly the same size. So then what else we're going to need? We're going to need a label so people know it's the input section. We're going to need another text box for the delimiter, which we can have that one quite a bit smaller. And then we can have a label for that so they can know what the delimiter is for. We can extend this text box here. So we have quite a bit of options already. So now let's go ahead and let's put our validate button in here. Now the validate button you don't really need. So let's just say we're going to leave that out for now. We're going to add that as an extra feature later on. So maybe the plans of the two different videos might change in the exact order of what we're doing. But let's actually just see what we can do with this here. So we have our input file, we have our delimiter. Let's go ahead and let's set up the output area. So let's just bring in another label for the output area. And then we're going to bring in a button once again. And then let's bring in another text box here. So I'm just going to copy paste that text box because it's just the right size. So that should be good. And then we want to know how many files we want to split it into. Because that's again definitely something like the validate is definitely like an extra feature, a nice to have feature, not super necessary. But we definitely need to know how many files we want to split it into, and we definitely need to know the delimiter. So those two are definitely mandatory. And then we need a button to actually split. And then we need something to show to the user where these files are, like the names that are going to be stored. Now there are a lot of options for this, so I'm just creating like a default name for the file, but you can actually even offer another text box to name the files, and maybe just have like a default value in that text box. This way there's something there for when the script runs. So let's just put a list box here. The list box always opens up as the full window there. So let's make this as big as those. We can shrink this down a little bit, and that should give us the ability to shrink our actual window down a little bit. Perfect. So this should be okay. So this is going to be our basic window here. So if we grab this label and let's edit the content of it and put input in here. We're going to put output here just so we can have a clear definition of what is what. Now for our input button, we are going to want to go ahead and Um, put pick file as the text there, and then the output, we're going to do pick folder. So now we're going to have to rearrange some of these just because the button became a little bit bigger than I was expecting. Now, even though the GUI makes it a little bit easier, it's definitely still a little bit finicky in the placement, especially if you want to have it look super identical there. So that should be good. And then our two text boxes, let's go ahead and let's just empty these out. And then for this label, we are going to put that as delimiter. And then we have the text box here, which is going to be our delimiter. Now, what I always like to do is I like to put a delimiter in there already. This way, it's not just like a blank text box when someone opens up the application. Um, so let's just move that there, and let's just add to a colon to the delimiter. Okay, so then let's put this label as the number of files. I'm just going to put the number sign of files and then a colon there. And then just rearrange that. And then in here, we're just going to put a nice default value of 2. And then for this button, we're just going to put the text of split here. Perfect. So we have all of our buttons. Now let's give our main window the title of CSV splitter. So here we are. So we have our window pretty much built out. So we have our input, we have our pick file, we have our delimiter there. So the basic of the form is all built out. Now, what we have seen in the last video is when it's a control that we know that we're going to have to interact with in PowerShell, we do need to give it a name. So what we're going to do here, let me just rearrange my window here a little bit. So let me just actually drag this right here because I really don't need to see the other stuff. So now that we have all of this visible, so what we're going to want to do is let's start off with our buttons. So we have our button pick file. So I'm going to name this BTN for button. And then we're going to do input file. And then for our output, so pick folder, we're going to have BTN output folder. And now let's go for our text boxes. So for our text boxes, I always use to like txt for text. And then we're going to do input file path. And then our output, you probably can guess it already. It's going to be txt output file path. And then we're going to have our delimiter, which is just going to be txt delimiter. And now for the delimiter, what I like to do, so there's going to be a lot of options down here. What I like to do is there's a option, which I just have to find where it is again. I believe it's in layout. Might be in layout, it might be in text. Yeah, so it is in text here. So in text, so if you go to the option text, you'll see this here, and then you'll be able to expand the menu. And then in here, we have a max length and a max lines. I like setting the max line to 1, so you can't do like a carriage return in there. And then the max length for a delimiter can only be 1. We can't have a multiple character delimiter. So I like to just use 1 there. So the limit to this application, of course, is it cannot handle tab delimited files right now. You would be able to add that as an option, maybe a little checkbox that just says tab delimited and then just ignores the entry in the delimiter text box. So let's do that there. And then the number of files, we are going to be doing the same thing. So we're going to be going into text, and then the max length, we are going to put this to 4. Now I'm setting this to 4. You don't need to put a length on this one, but the max lines, I would definitely recommend putting that to a 1 there, um, just because of um, max lines to 1. Now let me just make sure that I was actually at the right spot there. Yes, so max line is 1. Because like if we have it set to 4, I'm not really planning on you giving users the ability to make more than 1,000 files. And even this would allow 9,999 files. I believe that most people are not going to be splitting their CSV files into that many files. Now, of course, you don't need to put that max length. You could make it bigger. You could make it smaller. In most cases, I've only split CSV files into like double-digit numbers with the data that I was dealing with. So that's for that there. Now, what we're going to want to do for the file path text boxes is again, max lines. We're just going to keep that to 1. The max length, though, we're not going to want to set that at all. So it's just going to be, we're not going to have any length there. We can leave it at 0. That'll be fine. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set it to read only. Now, the reason why I want to set it to read only, again, this is a preference. You don't need to do this if you don't want to. I don't want my users to be able to enter in a file path. I want them to have to pick the file path using the open file dialog. This way it just avoids typos, easier to validate the file. Makes the validate button kind of pointless at that point, but at least it validates if it's a CSV file, which we could also do a different way, but we're just going to keep it like this for now. And then our second text box, once again, we're going to change the max lines to 1. And we are going to change the read-only value to true. And we do not want a text wrap for either of those text boxes. So for text wrapping, we want to make sure that we have it set to no wrap. Perfect. So that should be good. We have all of our buttons named. Oh, our button for splitting isn't named. So let's name that BTN split. And then our list, we are going to have to name a list files. Yeah, that should be a good name, is list files. So that should take care of the whole design there of our form. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go save main window.xml as. And what we're going to do is we're going to save that in our folder here. So let's just go to um, our folder here. And I'm going to name this CSV splitter form. All right, so we have that created. So let's just minimize this and let's open up a PowerShell ISE window here. And let me just zoom out for you guys. So what I like to do is I always keep the code handy for just the basic form loading, which we've seen in the last video. So definitely, if you haven't watched the last video where we first design a form, I would definitely recommend going to view that there. So here we have our basic code here. So this just adds the presentation framework. It points to our XAML file and it loads in our XAML file and creates all of our variables. So let's go ahead and let's just pick the correct file here, which is going to be CSV splitter form XAML. So once we have that loaded in, if we actually run this here, we get all of our variables and we don't see a form. And that's because we actually did not show the form. So if we do ps form dot show dialog and we run that again, now lately sometimes my PowerShell has been doing this because my computer really needs to be rebooted. So I do apologize for that. Let me just try this again here. And let's just do a ps form dot show dialog and open and close brackets. And what we're going to do is we're just going to actually save this here in our same folder. So let's name this YouTube CSV splitter. And let's run this here. So here we have our file, our form here. So we can see we have our input, our output, our delimiter, our default values. As we can see, we cannot enter any more values here. So that is awesome. Let me just zoom in so you guys can actually see it a little bit better. So we have this, our delimiter. We can only put one character in there, which is awesome. And our number of files, we can only put, so we need to make our text box a little bit bigger because if you do enter 4 characters, you cannot see it. So we know we need to make the number of files bigger, which that's okay. And we have all of our buttons. They don't do anything right now because we haven't added that functionality. But this is what I like to do. Like I like to build the form out, import it, and see what it looks like and play around with some of the settings and then fix anything later. So these 2 text boxes are completely read-only. I can click on them, but they don't activate and I can't type anything in them. So let's go and fix this number of files text box here and come back. So if I open up this, I'm just going to make this a smidge bit bigger, which should work. And I'm just going to actually make it a little bit bigger like that too. And then if we save that there, we should just be able to rerun this code. We have our bigger, and now we know we can only enter 4 characters there. So that is awesome. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we get no 5. Perfect. So that is, everything is working there. So we have our basic form. So let's see here. We're at 25, almost 25 minutes here of a video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video here today. So we've built out our form. In the next video, we are actually going to code this form completely, and we are going to add that validate option by the end of the video as well. So they're going to be a little bit of a longer videos. But if you have an idea of what we have to do in this form, definitely give it a try and see where you can get to. I always find that super fun in tutorial videos, like just trying to get ahead of the actual person teaching the course. I find that I learn a lot better that way. But if you guys want to wait for that video will be out. So this video is going to be out on Monday. The next video, I'll try to put it out as soon as possible for you guys. So the second video will probably be out on Wednesday or Thursday. So you should see that very shortly. So make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you on the next video.